Mostly, if we're talking about the actual process and what's going to move the needle, it's a lot to
Yeah.
do with content. And internally, we're also seeing that. So ages you. And I also think, especially if we look at Shopify, a lot of people were there on the growth side, like a lot of sales reps, SDRs, and whatnot to really, grow the business. If we just look at taking Shopify as an example, because they're one of the most extreme ones.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, they're gonna be okay. But to your point, yeah, I'd say I'm on the same wavelength.
Yeah, it just affects different levels of customer service, I'm sure, for those who are using that type of platform,
Of course.
especially for those types of individuals. Then again, they may have been bloated, right? I mean, a lot of companies
Yeah.
have seen a lot of opportunity, especially in the e-com market in the last 2 years, where it's grown significantly due to marketplace changes, of course, in our environment and whatnot.
Lots of VC backed
Yep,
companies.
lots.
Lots. But you know what's interesting, Neil, is I see it from the other perspective because now in the marketplace, especially as a service providers ourselves, we're essentially seeing an opportunity where there's lots of companies who had it good and now they need to find problem solvers because that money's
Right.
dried up from the venture capitalists and they've got employees, they've got stock, they've got all these supply issues. They need help on marketing, they need help on their operations. So, in my eyes, actually, if you're really good at problem solving, then there's a lot of opportunities to be had right now. And especially, like you said, maybe it was a little bit bloated, especially in e-commerce through the COVID period
Yep.
where everyone was stuck at home and the market's going absolutely crazy. It was, yeah, it was kind of the expectations kind of going to come back down. And now, we've got that after effect. But again, like I said, looking at it through my lens,
Yeah.
I'm positive.
Yeah. So, what do you see? A correction or a recession? What's your opinion?
It's a good question. I mean, I've not got a crystal ball like anyone else.
Yeah.
I think there will be a slowdown. How long that will last, I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
I don't think it will be quite as bad as everyone's making it out to be,
Yeah.
but we're definitely we're going to have a big impact. Like after what we've gone through over the last few years, it's been building up for a while. How does that impact the housing market? Like how much does that impact there and other areas of other industries? I'm not so sure. I think for staying in our lane, I
Yeah.
think in terms of the e-commerce side, I mean, let's just be honest. The supply issues are probably the biggest thing right now.
Yeah.
That's what's holding up a lot of the brands that we're working with. And once that's kind of sorted out, I think within 12 or so months, maybe 12 to 24 months, we'll be able to look at brighter days. What about yourself? What do you think?
Well, I feel the same way, right? I mean, I think a market correction was inevitable. I wouldn't go
Yeah.
as far as redefining the word recession, which some people think is a smart way to
Yeah.
approach it. Let's just hide the word and pretend
You
like it
want to
doesn't
sound
exist.
clever, right?
Right, let's make it, yeah, clever. I think, obviously we deal with physical products, as you know, and so movement and product and timelines have definitely disintegrated down to a new quote unquote normal in terms of what it takes to get product movement, especially at volume. That I see is actually been shifting. The prices have actually been going down per container. Things have actually started to kind of right size backwards. However, we got this sort of rubber band slingshot effect going on where the market had pushed forward due to tremendous amounts of capitalization hitting the market from our government that pushed people to purchase more, which created that demand. And now that purchase demand has come down and obviously the money's been spent in most of the cases, we're seeing that rubber band pull back because supply chains certainly couldn't keep up with it. So I do see that right sizing too as it starts to obviously come back in the market. Cash it kind of equates in people's banks and minds and spending and concerns. And obviously supply chain can catch up with that because there is a host of problems happening there in terms of people, timelines, cost, green initiatives, and whatever else kinds of things are impacting, the movement of goods and services. But I do, like you see in the next, 6 to 12 months, there are things that are pushing in the direction, open the crystal ball for a second and look at it that says that's going to be right sizing quite a bit. And as you know, in its size and shape of volume and business type, we have channels, we have strategic partners and stuff that are helping us still get fast boats and this kind of stuff. And in some cases, strangely enough, air shipment is actually cheaper than regular freight or boat.
Crazy, isn't it?
So it's going to become a winning strategy to ensure your logistics and pipeline of products are very powerful. This is something that was less of a concern 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and it was more like the product and the market and the branding had to be, much more intense, much more powerful, because we had a more even playing field. And I know this is a long answer, but I see you nodding your head, so I think we're on the same page. But of products and movement, but of course, demand and elasticity of demand change everything, right?
Yeah, and
So,
I think there's going to be innovation because
yeah,
at the end of the
always.
day, these kind of markets, they lead to tough people, and obviously, inevitably, tough people lead to softer times, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
right now, there's going to be people are going to have to get creative. They're going to have to get creative to
Yeah,
get through this period. And I'm already seeing this, having
yeah,
conversations with lots of different founders. Actually, one thing that's really interesting is the push back to wholesale from quite a
hmm
few, people that we're working with and
yeah,
exploring those options. Actually, now,
right.
obviously, the pandemic's passed, trade shows, that's another one. Like actually getting on the floor and getting out there, speaking to the customers face to face. People are starting to really go back to their roots, almost in that very entrepreneurial spirit. And I think off the back of that, there's going to be a ton of innovation. And as we get closer to the blockchain revolution, Web 3.0, I think there's huge opportunities
Yeah.
in this market space.
Where do you see you guys going with that in the 3.0 space? Where are you currently envisioning yourself?
Yeah, so I think one of the next like transitions, I think we're talking specifically marketing and e-commerce. There's actually a really good piece of software and the partnership that we're building. I don't mind shouting these guys out. They're called VideoWise. I recommend anyone checking them out. Now, what do these guys do? They actually have shoppable videos. So
Mm,
essentially, you can go inside the videos put on the landing page, but you can interact with the video and then essentially buy products inside the video. Not only that, you can share these videos across all of social media. So inside TikTok, you can literally have shoppable videos. Now, what impact does that have on conversion rates? So from the people who are actually engaging with the video, what they're seeing so far from a lot of the case studies they've been getting together is usual conversion rate. Again, this isn't all site traffic, but people who actually can engage with a video on site convert about 2%. They're seeing 5 to 15% conversion rate from implementing these videos on site. And I think this is one of the transitions there. So, and where does this come from? Actually, if you look at a lot of the Asian markets, social selling, I was talking to the guys from Berlin Brand Group a few months back, and the social selling dynamic, there's so much potential there. And I think definitely it's different in the West. There's cultural differences, but I think
yeah.
this is a step in that direction. Obviously, going to be a lot of infrastructure. That's the hardest thing. It's getting all the infrastructure in place to go obviously beyond that. And then we're going to see the metaverse coming in within probably, maybe it takes a decade to get fully integrated. But there's a lot of infrastructure to sort out. But I think
There
social
is.
selling is the middle
Well,
ground.
in adoption, right? Because you've got a whole generation of people
Of
who don't
course.
necessarily feel comfortable even buying online yet. Like I know there was a huge
It's
adoption
crazy.
curve during the last 2, 3 years that forced people into a position of making choices and options for purchasing. And of course, a lot of them got on Amazon because it was simple, it was known, it was trusted, it was relatively easy for them to do that. My family was, my parents were one of those people who never really bought online, and Amazon was like, well, I guess if we have to, and then they're like, well, we kind of like this.
Yeah.
This is kind of easy, just kind of click on the check button on this.
It's
But there's still a big adoption, don't you think, in terms of people trying to get a handle on the idea of the metaverse as it's coined now, right?
Yeah, 100%. And look, you also touched on the point that not everyone's comfortable with shopping online. And I'd mentioned, again, some of the brands we're working with, they're looking back at retail. Retail
We're going
is
back.
still huge and wholesale is absolutely huge. And people,
Yeah.
especially on the e-commerce side, if I'm being totally frank, because I was one of these people myself,
Mm,
they're almost too narrow-minded. They just look at that as, yeah, that's the old way. But what you really
mm,
need to do is look at those things together as kind of a macro
yeah.
approach. But then,
Yeah.
yeah, as we go for that next stage of adoption, 100%, I think something to bear in mind is that the next generation of people, like the Gen Zs, they grew up online. So,
Yeah.
it's for me, I was exposed to social media. I mean, Facebook, and this makes me feel old now at 30, but it's 20 years old, Facebook, which is insane, right? Like you
Right.
wouldn't think.
Doesn't seem, it still seems, yeah. Yeah, it does still seem still in that place, right? Like we were just there 5, 10 years ago.
People that are born now,
Yeah.
they've always been around social media and they've
Right.
been integrated into these platforms and they're constantly, probably they're spending like 5, 6 hours a day, which probably it's not healthy, but they're
Mm.
conditioned to it. So I
No, I
think,
know what you're saying is true because the Direct Mailing Association, for example, which has got, 20, 30 more years of statistical relevance in terms of marketing and consistent of marketing, has now shown most recently the 18 to 35-year-old group is some of the highest opening and buying rates are coming off of direct mail from that millennial group.
yeah,
And what you just touched on was basically they're kind of desensitizing themselves to the ads, the online, the constant push to 20 plus years of their existence in being in the phone and in the online world has led them to say, there's more trust for me in stuff that you and I grew up with, like Sears robot catalogs and other stuff that we would always be looking for the mail for things to get,
yeah,
Christmas gifts from, right?
of course.
And it was a big experience to have the mail show up and things to buy and stuff to look at and that kind of stuff and tangible aspects of buying and purchasing decisioning. And you could see that in just those statistics showing that, they are buying more on like postcards and stuff now
Yeah.
than any other demographic now.
No, it's amazing. Something I heard the other day, which is really interesting. Obviously, we're recording a podcast as well. Is the fact
Yep.
that long form content, and I know the ages, it's mostly millennial. I think the fastest growing market, but I
Hmm.
might be wrong there. But long form
Hmm.
content with podcasting, which is just two humans having a conversation. It couldn't be closer to what like our evolution is growing
Yeah.
really fast, and that's obviously the
Yes.
opposite end of the spectrum. And the other thing is I heard something the other day, I can't remember what podcast it was from, but actually a lot of Gen Zs are starting to veer away from TikTok. I know it's like not just TikTok, social media, and really understand that almost with this new awakening and the fact that the internet coming together and that shared hive, so to speak, as one mind,
Hmm.
is people
Hmm.
are seeing and sharing that actually this stuff isn't that healthy for you. So there's also that part which it might go so
Yes.
extreme, it might just completely swing the other way. So that's
I
interesting.
don't disagree. No, I don't disagree because the thing I saw the other day was basically we had an 8 second last year and we have a 7 second this year. And what they compared it to was an average gorilla has an 8 second span of time, and the average person on the social media is at 7 seconds now. So
Wow.
there's this idea that you have to say everything in 7 seconds, which is nearly impossible. So to your point, though, when the learning, the education, knowledge, and transfer moves from a transitory state, a bite-sized state, into I want to learn, adapt, grow something, improve myself, improve my condition, improve my situation, my life, my family, my friends, whatever. I have to consume something of value over a longer period of time, and I see this happening more and more and more. In even my podcast, though, still don't go past 20 minutes because the average attention span is just not going to listen to a 48-minute long talk. Not usually. Not as a majority. The older demographic, absolutely. And by older, I know this is going to sound really stupid, but I'm 46. But people my age or older are going to listen to something longer, especially if they feel like there's value in it. And I've had a lot of people criticize me because they're like, "Well, you don't have a 20-minute VSL sales video on your page." And I'm like, "No, it's like 48 minutes long." But it's just pure content from beginning to end. There's learning, there's nuggets, there's information, there's things for them to glean, and there's an offer for them to just connect. It's very simple. It's not high pressure. And they're like, "Well, does it work?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it actually qualifies the right people to the right conversation,
Yeah.
and removes those people who simply just don't have the time and energy
Yeah.
or desire to overcome and become part of this kind of model of business that we're talking about, which is e-com. It is a patience game. It does take time, it takes money, it takes capital, it takes energy, it takes actual activity to expect to get results out of it, right?
100%, 100%. And there's lots of changes on the ad side of things as well. And we talked about kind of swinging back to what we spoke about of a correction. I think that's also happened with paid media, because I don't know what you've seen from your side, but especially if we talk about Meta and those kind of platforms, about, let's just say in 2016, and most people just don't realize this, Neil, that the big players weren't spending that much money there. Like, I'm talking to some pretty big founders who've got a lot of backing, and they're putting about 5% of their budget into digital, right? Now they're putting 40, 50% in. So yes, there's lots of other factors in terms of the competition to the space, but you've got to remember, these guys don't care about ROAS. They just care about as many impressions as possible, and they've got huge budgets. All they care about is brand awareness campaigns. So is it really a surprise that the CPMs are going up and all the costs are getting more expensive across all the platforms? And I think people forget this. What happened is people built businesses around unrealistic expectations, and now 5 years later, when they didn't choose to adapt, now they're complaining, saying, you know, this is the end of the world. In reality, sorry guys, I'm just going to tell you straight, you guys got complacent and it's your fault.
You got behind. And it's got this model, like I try to help people understand this, and I know you will appreciate this. It's 6 to 12 months to create a real business. It's 1 year and 12 months of time to actually see your business churn into a profitable machine with a realistic growth and a realistic opportunity and some brand awareness or segmentation to your business. If you're still in that 30-day, mindset of the make money world and all this other nonsense that's being sold for so long, you're missing it. And I frankly see a lot of people, and maybe this is because I do a lot of disqualification in my marketing processes before I talk to anybody who might want to get involved in my company, is that, it's this aspect of how serious, how much time, and what's a real business actually get versus where they've been sort of out in the world of social media and YouTube viewing and stuff like that. It's just like, oh, I got $1 million in 30 days. Great. What they don't tell you was that was like 9 months into the business and they spent $1 million to get there, right? They kind of miss that detail.
Yeah, it's always the overnight success, isn't it? I mean, it's always the,
15 years to an overnight success, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or
I may have struggled. I was eating Pop-Tarts in my car, but then it all happened, right? I love those marketing things. So from your perspective, like as we head forward, and obviously we're headed into Q4 by the time we're recording this, going live, where are you seeing yourself really putting your time, energy, money, and focus in your business and your clients for the coming year?
Yeah, sure. So it's mostly, if we're talking about the actual process and what's going to move the needle, it's a lot to do with content. And internally, we're also seeing that. So whereas most agencies just got loads of media buyers, yes, we have really smart media buyers, growth marketers, but we also have creative strategists. We also have video editors. And these are the kind of positions that we'll be looking to push more and more because it's all in the content. Again, and might sound crazy to some people, a lot of the targeting we do, and we're talking for like 8-figure brands that do 30 million a year, we do completely broad targeting. Like, again, the algorithm does the heavy lifting for us, but in the content side of things, we have rigorous systems in place that we're creating at least 36 new assets every single month. And we're talking about very high quality assets. And we've got the systems in place to be able to deliver that on a consistent basis. So user generated content is the thing that moves the needle right now more than anything else. But the thing is, and I was saying about this on a LinkedIn post today, that people think you can just reach out to someone and they'll just shoot the perfect video. This is just not the case. There's a real science to this. You can't just reach out to influencers because they've got a big following and expect that they can pick up the camera and talk about your specific product with your pain points, your solutions, and talk to your ideal client profile. You need really, ideally, either an agency or an in-house consultant or someone on your team who's actually preparing the creative strategy. So whether that be creating different briefs for these, UGC creators to record, and then obviously off the back of that, that's not the end of the process. You've also got the editing to make sure, like you said, 7 seconds. I mean, you say 7 seconds on TikTok, we're going for 3 seconds. The first 3 seconds, it's all in there on, for example, TikTok. After that, sure, we need to make sure there's retention on these short videos, but literally within the first 3 seconds, we'll know if an ad's going to be successful or not, which is absolutely insane, I know, but
it is insane because what can you say in 3 seconds? Buy my stuff. I mean, like, how much more?
You'd be very surprised, very, very surprised. And this is
give me a tip. So if somebody's listening, give us a tip. I'm sorry not to cut you off, but
sure.
like, this is exciting because I love these kinds of hooks. Like, what's a 3-second hook you could give somebody today that just kind of get their mind wrapped into this concept that if I'm going to produce TikTok or content for Reels, which is pretty big, YouTube and Reels and these kinds of things, what do I say? What's that first little hook? What should I look at? What should I think about?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I'm gonna come in as any marketer would and say it's not a blanket statement, and you're gonna have to do your own research on your own brand.
Yes.
But it's
Yep.
really storytelling, if I'm being honest and being authentic. So, for
Okay.
example, you could say, "When I was younger," for example, like something like that, or "I was trying these 5 things the other day," for example. So it's relating it to experience and coming across in a
Got it.
very authentic way, leading them in, putting seeds of curiosity in these people's minds and getting them to that next step where now they've committed, they've made the micro
Got it.
commitment. And then usually what follows the first 3 seconds, that hook, like you said, is usually a benefit or a solution of the product, and then potentially a pain to like amplify it up. So it's crazy. When we map out, let's just say a 20-second video, we have spreadsheets which has every single 3 seconds and the psychology of how we're breaking down those 20-second assets. So when you're scrolling on TikTok and you see a video there, then you're just thinking, wow, that's a pretty good video. You don't realize the science behind this stuff. The science that's every single like 2 seconds has been specifically formulated psychologically to make sure that it goes in a sequence and you're taking them through that process of education, really. A lot of the time it's educating them about a product they're not aware of, and of course, trying to get them to the website.
Yeah, no, dude, that's fantastic. Let's leave it at that because we're around our 20 minutes, and I would invite you to come back again,
definitely.
Nigel. Obviously, you know your stuff, man. I consider you a high voltage business builder, and I am honored that you came on today, and I'd love to have you back to unpack these some more and keep digging in, man.
Yeah, fantastic. And we're also going to be rebranding our podcast soon, so maybe we can have you on the show. It's been absolutely fantastic, Neil, and really enjoyed. I know. I just wanted to say, lastly, that it's not easy to grow a podcast for anyone out there. And Neil has been stuck in the trenches and he showed up consistently. And you talk about, a business being 12 months. I think you've been doing this about 12 months, right?
Yep.
So you've stuck in there every single day and now you're starting to see the fruits of your labor. So one thing I'll say, congratulations. I know how hard and like how much effort it takes. And I think you're setting
it's been a lot,
foundation
man.
there.
I appreciate it. Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. Yeah, we did break into the 10% for our podcast, but like you said, it's been a year of consistent work and just, showing people what's going on. And I appreciate people like you coming on and giving some knowledge and experience today. I know we didn't really get into your background, but that's not the whole point of this podcast. It's really to show some value, and you brought some value, and I'm so grateful for that today. Folks, if you appreciated this, check it out. There'll be links in the podcast description below and stuff we sent out so you can connect with Nigel. I expect that you should and you would if you want to be serious about growing your business in the next year.
Thank you so much.